day 4 of quarantine, and I don't know about you, but my creative juices are flowing. So you're going to get a second helping of food for thought this week. You know the drill. I'm Andrew Coppins, host of Critical Thinking, each and every Saturday, 5 p.m. Central Time on Mojo 50 Radio and visually at the Mojo 50 Radio Facebook page. Today's first question, because I've got a lot of them, but the first one is, why are we letting the government overrun our liberty so easily? I know we're supposed to be good little sheeple, shelter in place, and all of that jazz. But if you're going to tell us to do all of that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to give me more than, well, simply because the disease might spread more quickly to others and there could be some death. Sorry, but we've got governments destroying businesses, livelihoods are going bye-bye overnight, and then we have a government that is telling us magically they're going to save the day. Do you really think that unemployment numbers would jump some 800% in Maine without these draconian measures in place? Hell, in Massachusetts, they saw over 20,000 unemployment claims on Monday alone, which was more than the state had the entire month of February. Folks, that doesn't happen that fast with an economy, even if it was in a normal decline. It does happen as governments begin to mandate shutdowns. The media constantly runs numbers of COVID-19 positive tests and death tolls on your TV screens. All of it induces panic, and the lowest paid, sometimes hardest working amongst us, get crushed under the weight of the decisions the government is making. So forgive me if I have a few questions as to the efficacy of what you're doing. Forgive me if I don't just sit here and take it, but instead insist on you and the government showing us proof that what you are trying to tell us is actually going to be working, because we're about to tailspin an economy before it's actually naturally in a downward spiral. We'll save that part of the conversation for another time, but the point here is that we've heard a lot of what to do and why to do it without actually any proof of it working. We're living in fear based on a semi-educated guess, and a guess that many experts are now pointing out may not even be known to be effective or not. We've got known leftist organizations telling us models predict millions are going to die if we don't do something. Sound familiar? We've got a new Stanford Spark study suggesting we're actually overreacting and maybe doing harm to our economy that is unnecessary. These are but a few examples of conflicting pieces of information. I'm not saying I've got the answers, but this entire program is about critically thinking, and that means being unafraid to ask really big and important questions that may not be popular to ask. So I ask you, the American people, how long are you going to allow your government to take away your liberties based on hope and hope alone? I'm definitely willing to avoid a pandemic, even if it causes our economy to tank, if we can prove the measures the government is telling us is going to help will actually help. But we're treating a new virus as if the Black Plague is upon us and we must not allow certain death at our doorstep. Something just isn't right about what's going on in America right now. Could it be that our power-hungry friends in Washington, D.C. and state houses throughout the country are actually just using this as a moment to capitalize on the fear that they have created and implement, more control over populations that they've long wished for? Just look at what's happening with the solutions advocated for by some on the political left and the political right. They read like a laundry list of wishful thinking gone bad in many cases, and they all seemingly involve the government as a savior to an economic problem largely created by their reactions or lack thereof to COVID-19. Level heads, smart planning, and effective leadership waved bye-bye a long time ago in our political world. This isn't a left or a right thing. This is a crisis of real leadership and effective communication. That goes for the fear-mongering media and the politicians standing in front of us every day. They are sure long on doom and gloom and short on answers based in reason and logic. For example, has anybody asked, let alone answered, the question of why the CDC was the only point of testing for COVID-19 for months and months, even when we knew about the virus's quick spread? Why were regulations so harsh that a vaccine couldn't be produced in short order and its research incentivized a long time ago? It took our government until last week to release the hounds of private business to bail their ass out. Only after we got the government out of the way have testing kits finally become readily available, and critically, results also coming in faster and more accurately too. It's only after the government got rid of a ton of the red tape around vaccine and medication production that we saw multiple groups come around to attempt to get clinical trials up and running. Maybe we've got something in place, in about 12 to 18 months, but thanks to the government, we wasted valuable months of potential trial periods And who knows, we may actually already have had a vaccine that would be viable and near production. It's not like we didn't have a 3-month warning or anything. The point here, we're supposed to trust the very people who have gotten in the way of fixing this mess to then unravel the mess? Definition of insanity, anyone? Yes, my personal intuition is to be more contrarian in nature. But I'm also willing to, listen to evidence and reason and, dare I say, science from all sides of a debate. That's the key word, debate. As it comes to this COVID-19 situation, there certainly hasn't been much of a debate. If you dare to question why things are happening, the mainstream media will label you a denier and a danger to society. But part of critical thinking, which is actually critical to solving this very pandemic we're experiencing, is challenging assumptions, challenging conventional wisdom, and indeed being a contrarian. Asking questions is not wrong. Pretending you've got all the answers and dismissing questions is wrong. Forgive me for holding our government to a higher standard as they shutter businesses, demand that we shelter in place, restrict more liberties like gun buying, ammo buying, and all of that, even when you can leave the house, and then also tell us it's all for our own good. Then tell me why places like New York City and Philly are threatening to throw business owners in jail if they happen to stay open against government command. Yet people who would break into those businesses are now magically not to be prosecuted, and their fellow low-level criminals are being let out into the general public instead of sheltering in place in jail. Does that make any sense? No. If we are to shelter in place, we should be separated from people susceptible to spreading the virus, like those who are in jails, which are not exactly havens of health and sanitation. Shouldn't those people be forced to stay there until their sentences are up, not being released early or given no bail and potentially spreading the virus, following the advice given to us in the first place? Those two ideas don't square. Also not squaring is shutting down sporting events, restaurants, bars, and all of that. Yet, we can still get on an airplane, huddle in those TSA lines, we can still get on public transportation, we can still get on a train, and up until very recently, travel outside of the US was still a thing, including to Canada, who, by the way, allowed Chinese travel into that country up until yesterday. We haven't closed the southern border as of this piece either. If we're supposed to be shutting all of it down because social distancing is the only way to flatten the curve, these two concepts do not square. Yet those are the responses our government has given to us. I call bullcrap on our government's thinking here. So beyond the mixed messaging from our governmental officials, I want to get into math and science, because the left tells us we've got to rely on those things in their gospel. So let's start with #math, right, Andrew Yang? I'll start with an easy equation. Wouldn't more tests being made available and thus being used necessarily increase the number of infected people? I ask this because every day we see the shock headlines in the media, both from the left and the right. And I find myself thinking, no shit, Sherlock. Oh my God, did you know that we saw XYZ more cases today than yesterday? Newspaper headlines and websites splash with the latest scary positive tests and death numbers. So I'm going to say it real slow for the non-critical thinkers out there. More tests available equals more people being tested, which equals more total numbers of, wait for it, people that will test positive. The key is percentages. Are they skyrocketing? Are they staying the same or even reducing? You've got to compare positive, negative, and inclusive results. In fact, let's take, for example, this number, 8%. Did you know that the University of Washington, it's recently upped their testing capacity, and it's only resulted in a total of 8% of the people being tested actually coming out positive for COVID-19. 8%. Now let's look at this larger chart by UW Virology, where we see a pretty flat trend line in the positive test results from week to week. If we saw a steady incline on those numbers week over week, that would be frightening. Instead, we see what's on the screen right now, and the spike is actually in the negative category. That could be threefold. One, it could come from the fact that more people are being tested, as I stated before. Two, it could be that we're also seeing more accuracy in the testing itself, giving us better negative results. And third, more people are thinking they may have it and are getting tested, which is highly unlikely given the fact that there are pretty strict regulations on who gets tested. Regardless, science tells me that the vast majority of even those who believe they're really, really sick are actually not infected with COVID-19. And it may be that we are also at the end of, flu season, the beginning of allergy season, and we've been told for a month now that COVID-19 symptoms mimic those of allergies and flus very closely. Runny noses, cough, sore throat, and all that, making it hard to pinpoint exactly what somebody has without running a myriad of tests that may be very unnecessary given just how closely related treatment of these things actually are. Damn math, reasoning, and science. My final question. If all the evidence they tell us is true, then why aren't we reacting this way every time the flu comes around? This is not to dismiss the seriousness of COVID-19, because for some people it's very, very serious, and we should be mindful of others if we are sick. But again, that's good general advice. I'm only comparing to give some perspective here. Yes, we're having an outbreak of COVID-19, but we get really bad flu outbreaks too, and they are a hell of a lot more destructive to society if you believe that death via virus would be the measuring stick. You know, some 61,000 deaths in the 2017-18 season alone in the United States, compared to what, less than 10,000 dead for COVID-19 the world over? Do you want me to do the math on the numbers worldwide for the flu versus COVID-19? Can you imagine what they would look like without a vaccine for the flu? Speaking of vaccines or cures, there's a peer-reviewed study, damn science once again, that tells us a simple combination of already available drugs is actually curing COVID-19 in under 6 days. You want full information? Go to covidtrial.io. But what you need to know is the study in France, one of the 3 hotspots in the world for this virus, tells us that using a malaria drug and depending on the severity of the COVID-19 case, adding in azithromycin, can stop the virus in its tracks, as in 100% of those in the trial were cured in the time of the trial. 100%. So let's say, on a grander scale, that the 100% number isn't wholly accurate. Say even 50% efficacy is achieved. Why in the hell isn't the world over trying it, and why can't we just get back to our lives as soon as we see the first positive results here in America? We know how it can be stopped. Let's stop panicking the economy too. Luckily, President Trump jumped on this, and it appears ready to attempt to try something like this to stop the panic while dealing with the needs of those who end up with the virus. Instead, we've got a media and political class still trying to freak us out, impose insane bans, and not keep us calm and give us the positive news that there might be real hope. But back to the larger point here, even if the medication combination doesn't work, what standard of response to viruses and diseases are we now setting compared to the rest of the known viruses and diseases out there? We weren't in freakout mode despite the CDC, which we're told is God on information, telling us that we were 0.2% off an epidemic level of the flu this season, nearly 7.1% mortality rate. And did you hear it once on the news, let alone 24/7 until we all panicked? Did you see the panic over 10,000 deaths due to the flu in the United States alone by February? All I'm saying is proportionality should be a thing here, and perhaps taking a step back and thinking unemotionally is the smart way to handle this. Let's control the things that we can as a society, practicing good hygiene, staying home if you're sick with the cold or the flu, damn it, and being good to our fellow mankind. Let's then get the government out of the way, or at least acting as a positive partner in helping to solve problems as they exist. Sometimes time is our friend or our enemy, and vaccines coming to trial along with already known medications that have proven to be effective may indicate this is all ridiculous, especially if we keep this crap up beyond the end of this month. It's sitting right in front of our faces. So try what the study in France tells us is working. Trust science and get the hell back to living life before we allow our government to just drop us into a ditch that will look worse than the Great Depression. All for what math and science are telling us isn't any more devastating than the common flu. Yes, its spread is worse, but as we ramp up testing, the math is telling us the mortality rate is not that much different. It's not enough to stop living our lives in a thoughtful way. Certainly not enough to put our entire lives on hold. Let's be real here. Eventually, this is likely to become just a common coronavirus or something we don't even talk about again after this year is up. Like, none of us think of the flu unless you're getting notified to get your flu shot for the year. All I'm saying is, If you want me to believe this virtual shutdown of our world is worth it, you're going to need to provide actual scientific proof that what is happening is working. But that's virtually impossible thanks to your own incompetence over at the CDC and FDA, so good luck there. What say you? Leave a comment below here on YouTube or follow on social media at The Coppins Show. I'm Andrew Coppins. I'll see you on Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time for Critical Thinking on Mojo 50 Radio, as well as the Mojo 50 Radio Facebook page, as we go more in depth on this topic and more. Until then, be smart, be safe, and Matthew 547.